Now, today I am very pleased to introduce Dr. Bernard Beitman, who is a visiting professor at the University of Virginia, former chair of psychiatry at the University of Missouri, Columbia, where he served for 17 years, and is a fellow alumnus of Yale School of Medicine. He is internationally recognized for his research on panic disorder and chest pain, and his book, Learning Psychotherapy, has won 2 national awards. He is the author of Connecting with Coincidence and Meaningful Coincidences, and he is the founder of the Coincidence Project. He has been specially invited here for the book he's currently working on, Psychotherapy for Humanity. So we welcome him warmly.
Thank you, Bandy. Thank you very much.
Would you walk us through some of your thinking process? You wish to speak about the self-observer, and so perhaps you can start with that. What is the
Okay.
self-observer?
Uh, Okay. Um, I'll also be talking about synchronicity, and one of them is right here between Bandy and me. Bandy's been talking about uh, one mind, that humanity has one mind, and we need to recognize that, and not only recognize it, more importantly, act on it. One of the differences between the way Bandy and I are looking at things is that we just don't want to know the anatomy and the physiology. We want to know what to do about it. It's just being doctors, and we're both psychiatrists. And yes, we went to Yale Medical School at different times, but we knew some of the same people. So we were educated in an environment that promoted research and medical students. That didn't make us stick with stuff. So I was allowed to investigate various things, which is what I did. And I've ended up focusing a lot on synchronicity. And it's been a synchronicity that somebody told me to contact Bandy, and Bandy is working on just what I am working on. So there's a synergy between us that brings us together right here, which is part of the way things need to continue working, is people who have complementary capacities to be able to come together to work together. And so I'm here, and it's wonderful to have Bandy and I acknowledging each other in our own different perspectives about what this one mind thing is. What I'd like to talk about today is, at least start, is with your own personal self-observer. And the reason to talk about that is the as you heard perhaps last time, that both Bandy and I are very interested. Dr. Lee and I are both interested in the collective self-observer. The collective self-observer is a construct that has yet to be developed, but it's an analog of your personal self-observer. So Dr. Lee and I recognize that the collective mind needs to have a collective self-observer, much like therapists, as each of us is a therapist, try to activate the observer of the patient, of the patient's own mind. It's not only that, but also help the patient recognize the mind of the other person. And that's I say that pretty simply, but these are not everyday concepts. To know your own mind, there's a lot in there already. And then to be observing it, and then not just observing it, there's 3 functions of your personal self-observer. One is to observe dispassionately, objectively, you could say scientifically, whatever word you want to use to say, without judgment. Then after you see a bunch of things going on and you start seeing something that needs to be examined, you make a judgment about it, examining it, and you begin to see patterns that are potentially maladaptive in your own personal life, like you're not assertive enough, or you don't have boundaries that are good enough, because they keep having trouble with them. So your self-observer notices this lack of of a required change and says, here's a change that's necessary. Then the self-observer activates the change mechanism in you. So there's an analytical component and there's an activator for behavior component of each of our self-observers. The same would be true of the collective self-observer. At this time in our conversation here, what I don't know in talking to you and with you about these ideas is just how well do you recognize having your own self-observer? Because that's where this starts. And it's a bell-shaped curve. And probably in this group, it's more that you're more likely to have it, an active one than not. But I'd like to know just by hands, how many of you, put the hand up, recognized that you have a self-observer that's pretty active.
Yeah,
A lot
pretty
of hand,
part of
a
this.
lot of hands from one guy. Well, what is this thing, and how do you get it? How do you get it going? And I'll talk about that too, but we'll have a discussion somehow, and Dr. Lee is going to be mediating that. So I want to be able to hear at least from some of you about what your self-observer does, because there's something implicit here. I hope you recognize that if I ask you, are you aware of having a collective self-observer? Then, if you're aware of having a collective self-observer, then you have an observer of your self-observer, a meta self-observer, or I'll call it a second self-observer. So the second self-observer observes the first self-observer. And it's what we're talking about here with humanity. We need to have a collective self-observer, and as it develops, we need to be able to develop a meta or secondary self-observer to monitor the functioning of the collective self-observer and the personal self-observer. Well, this personal self-observer has to be clearly in your own mind for this collective self-observer to develop. But there's another part of this, and as I'm trying to be able to say, it's not just to observe your own mind. One of the difficulties with humanity right now is the various degrees of narcissism, you could call it, but it's self-involvement. And as I'm trying to write about in this current book, narcissism is rampant in the world. We have that in a quintessential form in the President of the United States right now. It's malignant narcissism. It's carried into awfulness, yet it has the same characteristics of narcissism in milder forms, which is a tendency to be all about you and all about your own mind. And this is a kind of selfishness that has developed and is continuing to develop. Many of you are old enough to remember one of the first McDonald's commercials. Uh, you deserve a break today. You got it, Richard. You deserve a break today. Uh, I listened to that. I said, why? Why do I deserve a break today? Because you have money to buy a burger is what was behind it. But it was more than that. There was something special about you, so special that you can even get a Whopper because you're so special. That's the beginning, for me, of how modern advertising and now social media continues to exaggerate our own self-opinion. and often inflates it beyond any reality, but still, you deserve a break today. Who are you? What did you do? I deserved a break when my brother and I, our our Babe Ruth League baseball team won a game. We deserved a break enough for my parents to buy us some donuts afterwards. Uh, that we deserved a break like that. We did something and then we got a reward for it. But now it's just if you got cash or you're just you, it's something that's enough. And that's been only a small part of the problem. We are rampantly narcissistic to various degrees. And what does that end up actually meaning operationally, as Dr. Lee and I would focus on, is that we ignore the mind of the other person. We ignore the mind of the other person and we project our ideas onto that other person's mind sometimes and then act as if that's the way the other person is. But to actually know the mind of the other person is quite a difficult task. We learn it from our mothers or our caretakers when they're tuning into us. So we tune into them to see them watching us. And very many of us didn't get an adequate enough bringing up to be able to get that particular process going. I'm being one of them. My mother, who was a Holocaust not survivor. She got out of there in 1933, got out of Germany, but she came with a narcissistic character makeup for a lot of reasons. Nazi Germany was a terrible place to have to grow up. And then leave. But we all have stories like that of parents who just weren't adequate for us, who loved us but weren't adequate. And I've had to learn the mind of the other person slowly over many years because it's not that easy to get out of our own mind. So, how do you do that? How do you get over into the mind of the other person? You have to wonder. Curiosity is essential. And I'm looking at the future of humanity with Dr. Lee. And the future of humanity requires many things about the environment, uh, and about the health of our ecosystem and just what we do with the energy that we've got. But essential part of the future is being able to not just get along with each other, but to be able to care about each other. And as Dr. Lee has written, when you recognize that we're all part of the same mind, then you are me and I am you and we are we together. Sounds like the walrus from the Beatles, but it actually was a little earlier than that. It's still the same basic idea that we are part of each other, but we're also separate from each other. And that's a tough realization to get to. Right now, it's just enough to be able to tune into the mind of your partner and see what he or she is doing and where he or she is coming from instead of getting mad right away. It's these are difficult, challenging ideas, and I'm looking to a future in which humanity is becomes more telepathic.
Dr. Beitman, just to go back a little bit, where does narcissism come from, in your view, and how do we get out of it? How do we develop that self-observer?
Oh, I'd almost I'm going to speculate about that, but I think you have an answer to your question, Dr. Lee. So I'm going to try, but I'm going to hope you're going to answer it a little better than I do because you have spent a lot of time studying narcissism.
Oh, well, not as I haven't thought of as much of the collective mind as you have.
Well, no, but we're talking here about a part of the collective mind that is highly narcissistic. That within this mind we have various myths, and narcissism is a kind of playbook, a movie that people are doing that want to get to, and it starts with your question: is how do we get here? How did we get here? And I'm not sure. I was doing the McDonald's commercial thing. I was doing society, but it's a fundamental thing is if you're not tuned into, if you're ignored, how so many kids of wealthy people are ignored by their wealthy parents who are out running around doing stuff and being popular and spending their money and wearing their clothes, and they leave the kid alone, and the kid doesn't get a chance to have that. But it's also neglect. And again, Dr. Lee, I'm so impressed with how deeply you've gotten into trauma because it's gotten me more into understanding trauma, particularly intergenerational trauma, as well as what's going on right now. And that makes it makes narcissism increase because you're caught up in your own difficulties. What's going on with me? I have to repress a lot of my own self, and that's a lot of work. So I have to project it out onto other people and behave in ways that aren't really me. But I got to protect myself. It's all about protecting myself. But I'd ask you to answer the question, where does it come from, and what do we do with it?
Well, it occurred to me as you were speaking that narcissism is not just focus on the self, but a focus on a fragment of the self.
Yes,
So you're kind of fragmenting your a part of yourself off from the rest of it.
yes, yes,
And
yes.
so you're bringing up narcissism seems very poignant in that we can then imagine the opposite end of the spectrum where your boundaries start to blur and you are not only coherent within yourself, but find coherence with others as well. I'm I'm returning the question to you.
Well, no, it's this is the tennis. This is a tennis game that we're playing here. So, uh, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the fragmentation because you have to emphasize a part of yourself and screen off, let's say, the traumatic part of yourself or the rage you feel yourself about the way you've been brought up goes out onto other people. The rage that was directed at you goes out at other people. So this fragmentation of self is goes parallel with what we're talking about the fragmentation of the collective human mind. And boy, is it fragmented, man. It is fragmented, but so are our minds, or many of our minds. So how do we bring them together? And bringing them together is what Dr. Lee and I are emphasizing, the collective self-observer. Just like you have to do it with yourself, but you have to do it with yourself. That's called work. I mean, I never understood therapy as work, even though I'm a therapist. It's somehow work. Work is when you push something around in a wheelbarrow. That's what I thought work was. But it is kind of like that. You move something in your brain mind circuitry, you change it. There's a kind of inertia that's not only about physical objects, inertia being two things, a tendency to stay where you are, and kinetic inertia, which is you tend to stay in the same movement that you are until another force comes off and knocks it off. So both static and kinetic inertia require some input to make it change. So we need the input. Right now, we got a great input called "We're Killing Ourselves," ladies and gentlemen. That one, that one should bother us because psychotherapeutic change is based on it's based on it's it's more pain to change, more pain about what will happen than it is to change. More pain about if I don't change than it takes to make the change. And a lot of us are feeling that pain right now. So we have to recognize our own capacity to make change and do the work, not just in ourselves, but then strive to do it collectively.
Yes, it struck me how you said that a large swath of humanity cannot, does not, or is afraid to observe their own minds. Some are too preoccupied with the challenges of survival or caught up with the demands of constant busyness. Others could activate their self-observers, but refuse. They do not want to look at their own motivations because they might see something they would have to change. That's from your own chapter, Awakening the Self-Observer.
It's really fun to hear you reading that. Yeah, yeah.